feeling?
Good. I think we're on. Yep.
Hey, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
I just got the big thumbs up, which means we are live broadcasting at our Transform Westside Summit. Good morning, I'm John Ahmann. I'm president and CEO of the Westside Future Fund. I'm excited you're here. Thank you for all you being here this morning. And for those, I always like to remind folks that we are broadcasting live on social media. So we appreciate our cameras, but we are live up on YouTube and other social media challenges. And I'm really excited to be here with my co-host, John Ingram. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I thought John forgot my last name for a second. It's a pleasure to have you guys here with us here at the gathering spot on the west side of Atlanta, but as well virtually online. So we just so appreciate you guys leaning in this work and being a part of the conversation.
No, thank you. And we want to start our morning with a big shout out to our summit sponsors, the Arthur and Blank Family Foundation. Thank you for sponsoring our summit here this morning. Thank you for sponsoring so much amazing work across the West Side with an amazing amount of heart as well. And having been at this a bit, we're so grateful, for me, going back well over a decade, Mr. Arthur Blank really calling folks to the table to say we need to really lean in and help these historic West Side communities and help us with our own vision statement. How do you help a community? Dr. King Radical Home. So thank you. So let's just get up there, Arthur Blank Family Foundation. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're really grateful to be joined by our guests today as a part of a panel. First, HouseProud Atlanta and the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation, two organizations doing essential work, serving the community, but really focusing on helping residents remain safely and securely in their homes. Their work is all about housing stability, and it's not just about buildings, it's about dignity, equity, family, and community. So we just cannot wait to really dive into this conversation. And our hope is that this conversation will deepen our own understanding as we continue to do this work, and that we're all able to really just highlight the challenges that West Side residents, among other residents across Metro Atlanta, face on a day-to-day basis as we protect affordability and prevent displacement. So again, I know for myself, I'm really excited about learning the special places that they show up in this work. So it's going to be an exciting day. Of course, I want to thank the great work of our Westside Future Fund team in the back. So if you get a chance to just say thank you to them, wave at them. Yeah, absolutely. As well as our strategic partners, many of whom are in the room. We have many stories to tell, so please make sure that you sign up for our newsletter. Subscribe now. You can. There should be a QR code in the bulletin, but also throughout the PowerPoint. Please make sure that you sign up for our Impact newsletter, because there's great stories that are obviously being told, but you can engage with us and help us to continue to do this work. In addition to our newsletter, we ask that you continue to engage with us on our socials. Subscribe to our Facebook, subscribe to our Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you're watching the summit on YouTube right now, we ask that you subscribe to those channels as well, so that you can stay up to date with everything that's happening with Westside Future Fund. And finally, just a reminder to everyone that don't forget to get your raffle ticket. If you didn't get it when you came in last time or this morning, make sure that you go back and get that raffle ticket, because we will draw for those raffles right after our program today. That will for sure happen. As usual, one of our favorite parts of our Transform Westside Summits is our opportunity to lean in with devotion and really connect with our own faith that is so important to the Metro Atlanta community, but also these communities where faith continues to be an undertone for the work that we do. And it's an undertone for Westside Future Fund and really our genesis of our work. So it's become our tradition to begin our meetings with a positive, inspirational message from a member of our community, recognizing that many of our community are driven by their own spiritual faith to participate in the West Side revitalization effort. The time at the beginning of our meetings really provide us an opportunity to share various inspirational reflections While our speakers will articulate their own personal faith, it's meant to be inclusive, inspiring, and meaningful with the story of Nehemiah as its guide. So I'm going to introduce Sterling Johnson to come on stage, who's a senior program officer for Atlanta's Westside at Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation. Sterling is a dear friend. He's a native Atlantan, a thoughtful leader, and strong advocate for economic justice and opportunity. His work is focused on justice and opportunity, increasing upward mobility for Westside residents, which, of course, all of us are so passionate about, and his voice is incredibly powerful and meaningful for this work today. So he brings deep experience in public policy and economic mobility, workforce development. He and I went through Lead Atlanta together, which is a program that brings 50 plus young professionals together, really focusing in this type of work where we serve the Metro Atlanta community together. And that was where I first got to see his passion, but really his incredible intelligence for this work. So we're really blessed to have Sterling as a partner in this work, representing the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, but also just as a driver for the success for residents, like many that are in the room. So let's please welcome Sterling to the stage.
Hey, good morning, everybody. What they didn't know is I used to be a minister, so you had a microphone in my hand and tell me to talk. No, I'm just playing. I'm not going to do that to you all this morning. I thank you all for the opportunity to be a part of this gathering. One, I'm new to the foundation, so always an opportunity to build new relationships. I'm somebody who's deeply embedded in and committed to community in all its ways. And so learning and meeting each one of you, hopefully having a chance to work and learn alongside you is something that I'm really looking forward to. So when I was asked whether I'd be interested in bringing the devotion today, both as an introduction of myself to you all, but then, of course, being a part of the space today to learn from you all and get to know new relationships is something I had to take the chance to jump at. So I'll talk really briefly this morning about some of my reflection in the devotion. And I want to first start just by saying, honoring all faith traditions. Of course, we'll be speaking from the Bible and the text in the Bible today. And that is my personal faith tradition, but I believe that there is something of value intended that we can all learn from each other, even in practicing different faiths. So hopefully you all can join us in following along with the conversation today. And so I started at the beginning in Nehemiah 1, specifically chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. And there were a couple of different questions as I was reading through the text that were coming back to my memory, one, in learning about this story of Nehemiah, but then two, thinking about how do I start to relate myself and where do I see myself, not only in this story, but then also about the work that we do. And what are some important tenets that we should be thinking about to ground and guide us. And so there were a couple of questions that I'll be using as posts and frames of reference for the discussion today that I think are really relevant. And the first is, what are we building and who are we building for? This conversation that will be, and you'll have a chance to hear from us a little bit later this morning with my fellow panelists, and we'll be talking about this idea about neighbors, right? And what are we doing to ground and protect our neighbors in the midst of a changing community, right? And so this story of Nehemiah is very relevant in that regard, because starting in chapter 1, he started this question of saying, there's this place that my ancestors are connected to, that my people are buried in, that has been under siege, right? And in understanding and acknowledging that, he says, and what can I do? What should I be doing in this moment to go back and not only in honoring and reverence of the people who occupied this land, but what can I be doing in service to the people right now in the midst of their moment of need? I won't read through the entire chapter, but in chapter 1, he just says the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was at the citadel of Susa, come from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. And they said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. It's broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. And when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keeps his commandments. And he went on to pray, to ask, and to inquire whether he should go back. and whether he should go back to rebuild. And he asked of the king, and he prayed to God, and God gave him confirmation to go. And the important thing to note of that story is that when he went back, it wasn't so much that he was going back from a position of opportunity, right? His goal in going back was not to build something for himself. His goal was to build something for the people and the people who were there. He was building for God and in service to God and in modeling of his faith. He was building in reverence to his ancestors and those who had been buried there. And he was building for the people who continued to occupy that land. And so when grounding again the conversation today, when we're thinking about what does that mean for the west side of Atlanta and the things that we are hoping to see become of this community, modeling in the faith of Nehemiah to say like, hey, like when we're going, right, let's go with reflection and thoughtfulness and reverence of the people who already occupied space. The second question was, why was he building? And the text makes it clear that he was building to reestablish the community and to restore it. Not just, again, from the position of saying that I want to do something and build some edifice unto myself. He said that these people were under siege and they were in need. And in the point of need, he said they needed their walls rebuilt so that they could be fortified, that they could be protected. And when they were building, they didn't just build from a passive stance, but he got together with them. And I'll come back to that point a little bit later. But then he said that they were there to provide protection. They were there to provide fortification and focus. And then they said, let's not go from this position of charity, right, that we're the ones who have the answers, but they went with the community. And if you read further along in chapters 2 and 3, the first thing he did is he went to the people, right? And he said, like, let's build together, right? And I think that's so important in this moment to model and to reflect on that he didn't come with, of course, he had this inspiration to go, but he didn't come in and immediately say, let me go build for myself. He went and said, let us, and he invited them to be a part of the process. And then together, then they started to get to work. And there's a quote that one of my mentors uses that I always use as a guide for my own practice. It's that work purifies relationships, right? That when we think through the way that we work and the way that we work together, then it's only the point that brings us closer to one another in a way that helps us to be in better relationship and right relationship for modeling in the community. And so in the third, he says, why was he building? Right, again, to this idea of reestablishing community, again, not from this idea of a vision for unto himself, but he said that I am building to make sure that they are taken care of, that these people who I want to honor through the work that we do feel and see themselves in the community that's being reestablished. And then the last, he said, who was he building with, right? So he was built with all the other community members, the merchants, the families, the priests, right, that he called everybody together to say, like, how can we do this together? And then the last, and I think the most important piece of this, is the how they built, right? And in building together, he didn't take that passive perspective to say, like, I have a vision and it's your job to go execute it. He said, like, let's get into the soil together, right? And he built together with everybody at one time. And I had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago at the Mission Investors Exchange to hear Brian Stevenson, and he said something that was very poignant to me. In making this transition over to the foundation, previously in my work, I was with the Partnership for Southern Equity, where I was a little bit closer, if you want to frame it that way, to the ground and direct service in different ways that the programming was getting done. And the question that has been brought to me oftentimes as I've been in the transition from other people is like, how are you managing this transition? It's different, right? Kind of being a little further away. And I would tell them and remind them that, yeah, I'm sitting in a different seat, but for me, the urgency of the work, I can't allow to be dissuaded, right? This idea that there are people who are having impact and being functionally, their lives are being functionally changed through the transition that's happening in our built environment. And so for me, this idea about being, and the example that Brian Stevenson gave was like having your hands in the dirt, that's what grounds and connects us to this work, right? And so when I see, and again, this idea about how do I relate myself to the story of Nehemiah, then that's where my reflection point came back to. It's like all of us from our respective positions may or may not necessarily always have our hands in the dirt, but we're all part of this community that's looking to build and rebuild together. But having that focus on who we're building for and why we're building, and building in honor and reverence to, of course, our Creator, our various faith traditions, and in the community and the people who reflect and restore and represent that place that we're looking to do our work in the most effective ways. And then lastly, building with our hands in the dirt in ways that grounds us and connects us through actual labor that helps us to be side by side, hand in hand together in order to create the community that we all hope to see for each other. And so that's my reflections on the devotion this morning. I see the timer going, and I gave you all back a minute and a half. So I didn't get too far and deep into the conversation, but I'm really looking forward again to learning more from each of you. Please pull me aside later today and start a conversation. I want to get to know you all more intimately and deeply, and I look forward to, in my new role with the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, to working with each of you more intimately and for a greater Atlanta's West Side. Thank you all.
Sterling, that was an amazing devotion. Thank you. And one thing I was reflecting on, and I saw a lot of heads going up and down. Was it purifying through the work? Was that your? The work purifies relationships. Yes, I saw so many heads nod when you said that quote, which I've already mangled up. But also reflecting when you said that, this Transform Westside Summit, at least for me, has become that, right? And coming together and how we build relationships, through our collective work together. And also really appreciate and have been reflecting on my own, journey with the Westside Future Fund and living on the West Side, to that story of Nehemiah. And as I said, our touch point is, how do you build a community Dr. King would proud to call home? And I live on Sunset down the street, and often reflect, if he and Cred are out on the front porch, what would I want to say? And an easier answer is to focus on the built environment, their new homes, their new parks, and clearly that would be part of the answer, right? Like what the built environment, but I think the part you really lifted up was, what is in people's hearts that are my new neighbors? And what kind of hearts do they have in leaning in to the other? And I think one of the most powerful sermons by Dr. King was the Drum Major Instinct. Really said, and to call into that heart when it's most hard to call in to be for that other. And really building that community, because that's the beloved community, is leaning from that heart of love for the other. And even the other, as you often say, I might not like Bo Connor, but I got to love Bo Connor as God does, and leaning into that built community through the place of love, and being in that way a beloved builder. So thank you for lifting up those lessons this morning. Let's give another round of applause. Exciting, thank you. And the next part, back to building our beloved community, is taking time for fellowship. We've learned in our journey, for many of you who've been coming, we would take the time for everyone to stand up and do a quick self-introduction. As much as we would coach people to move quickly, someone always had something that just really wanted to talk a little bit longer about. So to make sure we could get in our program, but also hold on to that fellowship, now we're going to take a few minutes. I think a clock will go up. And it's really to take a minute to get to know your neighbor. And I would encourage you to get to know the neighbor around you that you do not know. So I would take a minute to say, if there's someone here that you do not know, to introduce yourself, talk about where you're from. But back to it, I've so appreciative of these summits, is these connections that we can never predict, built on a common purpose that can lead to so much. So I hope when we do this fellowship that folks will take the time to self-introduce, get to know your new neighbor, and we'll be back to get back to the rest of our program. So thank you.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. Please take your seat. We have 2 minutes. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Going to jail because she's 13. That's why I say he knew her age. Yeah, he knew her age. I think she died accidentally. But everybody got to go. Everybody burn the whole house. Put some on my book. I'm gone. I'm gone. It's over. I am gone. I knew that. I knew he was wrong.
Talking to them like,
I was waiting for the clock to be up. All right, we're ready to get back together. If everyone can come back and take your seats. We're ready to start again. Would love it if everyone could go ahead and take your seats back. So thank you for being such a vibrant networking crowd. So if you could come back, and we're ready to get back with our program. So thank you for everyone. Kind of appreciate. We got an exciting program in front of you. We want to get to it. So if everyone could go ahead and please take a seat. So I'm gonna before I introduce our panel, I want to take a moment and certainly appreciate we got a great team at the Westside Future Fund behind everything that we're doing. And one of the things we're very proud about, and really I know will be a big part of our conversation this morning, is our signature program born out of our work on the West Side, the historic West Side. But I'm going to talk for a moment about our Home on the West Side program. So one, if you happen to be a participant in our Home on the West Side program, just raise up your hand. If you're a participant, I know we have a few here this morning, so thank you. We have a great team, but our lead on Director of Home on the West Side program is Tamika, and Tamika, I know many of y'all are deeply familiar with Tamika, so thank you. So our Home on the West Side program, for those that are not familiar with it, we bought up a lot of land in the neighborhoods, and as we bring that online, it was really important to align that back to the devotion we hear this morning. Our Home on the West Side program prioritizes those that have a live connection to the neighborhoods. Have you worked in the neighborhoods, or have you graduated from Booker T. Washington or one of the historic black colleges, Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse Medical, Morris Brown? And so our Home on the West Side program is to bring people out that have a connection, and we also provide subsidy, thanks to a lot of great donors, the West Side Tax Allocation District, to make those homes and rental product affordable. And we're especially focused now in our work and making sure people know about our product that we're bringing online, because we don't really advertise, on an MLS for our new home, because we want to be very intentional about that community building. So we really want to take a moment for people to see it. And if you're personally interested, we would love for you to get enrolled, or if you know someone you think could be interested. But these are some of our homes for sale. What I'm really proud of, and again, the great work of our team, is we're very thoughtful. A key thing when we brought our work online was the community saying, as you build new things, make sure it looks like what was here before, right? So the design standards you see are very intentional about our product. So I'm going to click through some slides. And a really important part is that we sell our homes what it costs for us to build it, land plus building, but to make it affordable, once you qualify for a mortgage, we offer down payment assistance. And this is, philanthropy, and this layers on top of what the City of Atlanta does, Atlanta Housing does. So along with our philanthropic support, people can get buy downs of $80,000, $90,000, even $100,000, again, having qualified for a mortgage, but to make that home affordable. So this is 595 in English Avenue. This one, and unfortunately part of the challenge we face in the neighborhood is it's right next to a home that really needs to be demolished. This has been difficult to sell this one, but we're hoping that demolition occurs soon to make that more safe. On English Avenue, North Avenue. And so we have a target this year to sell over, right around 25 homes. So you can see, so this is our newest multifamily rental on Joseph E. Boone, 839 Boone. You can see the 3 retail that we'll have activated later this year. And this is a new over in Echo and English Avenue. So and we also, again, really appreciate the team, is we've just launched a new website. So everything I just clicked through is up on our new website. So if you want to see what homes we have available, if you want to see the rental we have available, please check it out. So that was the program. So thank you for let me go through that. And now I'm excited to bring up a panel that'll be, I think, talking about these very issues. So thank you. Let me flip my page, make sure I get this right. But today's discussion is going to be all around how we address displacement through affordable housing. As we appreciate and what we've saw happen here on the West Side when we started our work, I can remember I could drive around the neighborhoods and would see a lot of rental product. Maybe you wouldn't want to necessarily the highest quality, but I would see 500, 550 a month, 600 a month. And that's what, at the time I learned, policy experts called naturally occurring affordable housing. Naturally occurring affordable housing, as opposed to, housing subsidized by the Atlanta Housing Authority. And the Atlanta Housing Authority has a wait list, I think, of over north of 10,000 people. So there's more demand for high quality subsidy than there is. But that was still housing, and we predicted what exactly happened. As more people move into neighborhoods, those land prices jack up and all those rents. So that stuff is disappearing. So the core of our work is how do you maintain that affordability? How do you maintain community, residents in the face of, because you need people to move back in to restore that vitality, but to do that in a compassionate way. So we have a great discussion today with HouseProud Atlanta and other long-term leaders at Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation. And I think, thank you to Sterling. You can see he's going to be an excellent moderator with his deep knowledge already. And we appreciate you leading our conversation this morning. So let's give that up as our panelists come up for a discussion. And know they're going to take some time to talk with one another, but then we will have about 10 minutes for Q&A when they're finished.
All right. I'm back again sooner than you all expected. So I will not belabor. We've got some questions that we'll tee up and talk with our panelists this morning. We have the pleasure with the Arthur and Blank Family Foundation of having the opportunity to be funders to these 2 amazing organizations, and I want to make sure that you have all the time to hear from them and about the work that they're doing. And we want to hear from you all. That there will be questions and opportunities to engage. So without further ado, my first question is a toss-up, but also one that gives us an opportunity to hear directly from you all as panelists. So you're both highly integral, talented, credentialed professionals, creative people who could do anything, right? Why housing justice?
My Mac's on, I'm sure. Listen, I was raised in some less than ideal housing. I am Lisa Flowers Jones. I'm the executive director of HouseProud. We're this amazing teeny tiny nonprofit that's growing, that does no cost repairs for seniors, for veterans, for the disabled, for legacy homeowners, to keep them warm, safe, and dry, and rooted in their community. So that's who I am. To my core, that's who I am. But why housing justice? I was raised in an environment in deep southern Alabama where I lived in a house that was not good for my mother and I. My parents were basically seniors. Well, my mom had me in her late 40s. My dad was in his late 60s when I was born. It's a long story. We'll talk about it later. But if they were alive, my parents would be, close to and over 100. And so I understood the difference between living in housing that's not good for you, that you fought to get, and then working really hard to get to the city of Montgomery, Alabama, where we ended up living in much better housing, how much better that was for my mental health, my parents' mental health, for just having an environment that feels good. That's something I deeply believe we all deserve. So, my parents fought real hard to get that second house, and a lot of people came along trying to kind of get that house and the land out from under us. So housing justice for me is something that goes back to my roots. Then I moved here and started seeing a lot of stuff that I didn't like around folks being displaced. And so housing justice has been my whole life, whether I knew it or not. It's been where I belong.
Michael, what about you?
Wow. I just accept your premise and praise for the sake of the question, but it makes me uncomfortable. So even though this answer will start maybe...
Start with introductions.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for him. I want him to yell at me.
Who are you?
I'm Michael Lucas. I'm the executive director of the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation. Been in that work here at AVLF for 16 years. So even though my answer will start more like 32 years ago, I promise it'll be short. But I was a young social work undergrad student, and it came time I wasn't a social work student yet, and it came time to kind of pick a major, and I hadn't been very academically focused. And I remember somebody asking, well, what is your major gonna be? And I thought about, they said, well, what do you like to do? Because I didn't have an answer. And I think my answer must have included some of the service work and volunteering, honestly, that I was fortunate enough to get to do when I was younger. And they said, well, have you thought about social work? It sounds like that. And honestly, it pays pretty close to your volunteer work. So shout out to all my fellow social workers. And that was the start of a journey that even during undergrad ended up doing a lot of work at a local public housing development. This was in Texas, and ended up being the most formative part of my education, including the degrees that I got after that time. And it was kind of youth development work ostensibly that was based and housed inside the traditional housing project. And at that time, it was youth development work, but I was still pretty much a youth, 18, 19, so now I feel really old when I'm still in touch with a lot of those kids, and they're in their 40s, and that makes me feel really old. But that work was really formative for me, and years later, I was able to work in kind of a policy area at the same time and see directly go from the job that was earlier in the day and see the way law and policy and the kind of offensive and racist policies that were being set in that legislature were directly impacting the families that I was working with in the latter part of the day and weekends. And so it kind of put in me this idea that wherever my career went otherwise, I still wanted to work in the area of housing justice and the issues that I saw those families dealing with every day.
I love that. And I heard just from both of you a little bit that leads us into the next question. But looking across the Atlanta landscape right now, housing, of course, housing affordability is a major concern on a number of different fronts. If you had to choose one thing, and I know it's hard to narrow down to one thing, what would be the thing that concerns you the most? And we'll start with Michael for this.
Can I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this going to be?
The green button.
Yeah. All right. This is the participatory part. Anybody want to tell me what that number represents?
So we hear a number of complaints.
It's okay.
The number of evictions in Fulton County last year.
Ooh, wow.
25% of those evictions were in the 6 clusters, including the Washington cluster being one of those. But the 6 clusters, if you've paid attention at past Westside Future Fund summits or presentations that I see all the time, or the maps that are all the same for every issue that a lot of us deal with, you won't be surprised which clusters those are. These are APS clusters, forgive me, and which ones they're not. You can see the list over there behind Sterling. 25% of the evictions occurred in those of the whole county. Look how long the county is, 70 miles top to bottom. So that is my, I guess, dramatic answer to your question, but this impacts a lot of things, and this is kind of central to how AVLF tries to do its work of not just access to counsel and addressing evictions and displacement, which is obviously important, but trying to also kind of educate, but be intentional about how that work connects to other issues that I think are more accessible to folks, like the way that it's impacting schools, the way that it's impacting some of the neighbors or kids that we know that we don't see the next week because they're changing schools involuntarily every year. Just so you know, it's more or less the same. This is the year before, 47,000, 20% of the evictions in those areas. I'm not a statistician, not saying that that's a trend in that direction, but it's certainly not the direction we want to see this year. And then this has an impact, right? These are the enrollment turnover numbers in those schools. I arbitrarily picked a more shocking cutoff, which for me was 30% enrollment turnover. That transiency, that means the same kid that was there one year is not there the next. And I'd like to believe that that's all because people are moving up. But I think in these districts and seeing those eviction numbers, that's not always the case. I don't care how good our friends at APS are, or purpose-built schools, or whoever, if that's the transiency rates you have, it's going to be a challenge. And we're trying to do deeper work right now with Georgia State and others to pinpoint how many of those evictions were APS families, but we know from our work that it's a lot of them. That's hard to get statistically. It doesn't say that in the eviction filings, but we're working on being able to tell that story better. I was just curious, since we're here today, this is that same data zoomed in for the Washington cluster, but I want to be clear, this was just from October and May, because I was interested in looking at it in the same time frame that schools measure those transiency rates. Who was there at the beginning of the year, comparing it to who's there at the end. This is one of the biggest things that concerns me now. I don't know if you want this slide yet, but there it is.
Okay.
You know, I think too often in these conversations, and today is a good counterexample, so I'm grateful to the Westside Future Fund, when we hear about legacy residents and all these efforts, and yes, like more units and responsibly managed, truly affordable units like Westside Future Fund is putting out there, and homes, like all of that is incredibly important for sure, but I know, and Lisa would agree in her work, there's folks that are left out of that conversation a lot, even the good conversations that we're having. And in my experience or observation, it is the legacy renters. So in Atlanta, because income disparity is so high, there are legacy renters. It's not just for a year or two. If they're lucky enough to not been part of those statistics, you can have residents, and I don't have to tell a lot of this audience, that are there for 13, 15 years. That is home.
That's right.
But that they are not in a lot of these conversations when we talk about legacy residents, legacy homeowners. It's the home ownership. It's getting more units out there. But if we don't also do the work to keep folks, those legacy renters here while we're building all of that, while we're getting and scaling up more programs like Westside Future Fund, well, they're not going to be the ones moving into those better opportunities. They are going to be spiraled further out of the city. They are going to be more often spiraled into homelessness. And so I just think we need to make sure all of those efforts are important, but we need to make sure that they're still there to benefit from that. And so we're talking about legacy renters and all the things that lead to their displacement. I'm sure you'll ask me questions that allow me to be on my soapbox longer about that, but that's my answer.
Go ahead, Lisa, I'm sorry.
Perfect segue to, probably won't see this on my slide, but to legacy homeowners, right? And so my kind of alarming stat of the day is on the low end between 2011 and 2021, $685 million worth of equity was lost out of Black and brown communities right here, right? And so when you think about that, it's like, oh, that's a a lot of money. That's on the low end. It could be as high as $3.1 to $3.4 billion worth of equity that's lost through equity theft. And so we talk about my seniors that we're kind of on the ground with, talking to, get approached constantly by people who want to buy their homes because they see their homes as an asset. But my seniors, sometimes who have been in that home for 20, 30, 40 years, because that home is falling down around them and the street that they live on doesn't look the way it did 20 years ago, they start to see their home as a liability. And so what I'm trying to do, and we're trying to do through HouseProud, is to flip that narrative, to rebuild the streets, right? Rebuild the home, right? So looking at home from a heart space of when you go home, what do you think of your home as? You think of your home as the place where you come put your feet up, that you enjoy, that is warm, safe, and dry, that is your place of peace, where you do your prayers, where you raise your children. But for a lot of seniors, their home and their street is now a liability to them. And these folks who come in see it as an asset, but they don't see it. So what we need to do is figure out how to flip that narrative, right, through education. Because to me, preservation without education, you're just setting that house up for somebody to come and steal it from them and to steal that equity from them. And that's why we have such a big wealth transfer here, right? And so we have this big wealth gap divide. That wealth is encompassed within the equity of the house. But if a senior doesn't know that, because they aren't educated on what their house is worth or what their house can be worth, then that $685 million that was lost in that period of time gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, your whole community has changed, and the senior has not been able to get any of those dollars and be paired with someone who can tell them, how can I use this money, put it somewhere safe so that my child can go or my grandchildren can go to Spelman or Morehouse or some beautiful place on the west side and start to shrink that divide. So, I forgot your question. What can we do? We can gear more money towards not just preservation. I think if you talk about preservation without talking about education as right together with it, then you're not doing the full job. A roof is great, but roof's no good if you're not talking about how to rebuild community and maintain the equity within the home so they can utilize it.
Yeah, we're gonna go rapid fire because I want to make space for a community, but I do want to talk a little bit about that very point, about that balance between production and preservation, right? You'll hear a lot of the national conversations, a lot of the discussion is always centered on how do we build more houses? How do we build more houses? And that's a necessary part of this, but oftentimes lost in that conversation is the residents who already have houses that are falling into disrepair because they don't have access to the capital needed to maintain the home, or those who are living in that naturally occurring affordable housing who haven't had the opportunity to really stabilize themselves through home ownership, that there's this idea that we can produce more housing, but there's also this conversation about preservation. So what would you say to people in the room, developers, people of interest, community members, about finding the balance between the pressure to grow a community through development and those who are looking at maintaining a community through preservation?
Okay. I feel like we need to flip the narrative, not flip the narrative. I feel like as developers, as community members, we need to, as I said before, really focus on the legacy homeowners as an asset and having them to believe that they are an asset to the community, right? And so anybody who knows me, who's talked to me more than 2 minutes, knows I'm on fire about this concept of be neighborly, right? And that's where when you bring new housing in, yeah, you got to bring in new housing. We need new housing, right? We need infills. We need houses to be renovated, that you make the seniors and the legacy homeowners aware on the front end. You work really hard to help them maintain those houses and connect them with the folks, the brand new folks. So we shut down streets and we go door to door and we get those new neighbors who are part of this new production curve, right? Or this renovation curve for affordable housing to be connected to the seniors that have been there, that have helped to undergird and build the community, so that you look at yourself as an asset, you know your asset, your home as an asset, and then your neighbors as an asset, and your street as an asset, and your community as an asset. So that way, even if things start to get a little bit out of balance and maybe you have a little bit more production than you do preservation, the senior that's in that house or the legacy homeowner that's in that house If they make the decision that I want to sell this house, they make sure they're selling it for market value. They make sure they're getting the full amount out of it. You can take that money, go to Tahiti if you want to, and go live on a ship. That's fine. But you are entitled to the money that's within that house. But in the time that you're there on that street, you need to be connected to your neighbors. So yes, do we want there to be a nice balance? Yes, I think we need to be more mindful about preservation in a deeper level that's not just, oh, well, we made the house look a little better. You got to pair education with it, and you got to pair financial planning with it, and you got to pair, our friends from other organizations that can help us with code enforcement problems, wills and trusts, transfer on death deeds, all these things that equip them holistically so that it's an asset for everybody.
Real quick, I'm going to jump in here because I didn't take moderator privilege because I see the time. And I definitely want to be sensitive to making space for our resident and our community voice. And so while we've got this esteemed panel of experts up here, and while we're finding any hands to go up if you've got a question for the panelists, I'm going to ask a question to you, Michael, in the interim. Walk those who have never seen an eviction through the process of what it looks like from the resident or the family point of view. And then we'll go ahead, if you can maintain those hands, and we can get microphones ready for questions.
I think one of the most important things to point out is that it often starts long before the landlord's notice. And there's a lot of narratives about how it comes past non-payment of rent, narratives that take hold about a tenant just not being responsible, not paying their rent. I've been a tenant lawyer for 20 years. I've yet to meet the tenant that just decided not to pay the rent just to, see what happens. And you see statistics about what percentage of cases are non-payment. And I'm not naive. I know there's some of those. I know I talk to lots of landlords. Some of my best friends are landlords. I know that there's other examples out there, but that's not who we see at volume. That's not the majority of those. What I often see or what presents as a non-payment case started 6 months before that tenant trying to get some repairs done. Those repairs don't get done, that drives up the utility bill. Those repairs don't get done, you're eating out more because the kitchen appliances or what have you aren't working. Maybe you do withhold rent because you have no other idea how to get somebody's attention, or maybe it's not even that, because you went to an AVLF talk and you learned, don't withhold your rent, as fair as that seems, don't do that. But there's another part of the story that has to do with the obligations on the other side oftentimes. And sometimes it can be a pure not payment or rent case. Although I've still not seen the person that's just playing around with that. I've seen the people who got less hours at their job or an unexpected medical condition. But anyway, I say that to say that's how it starts most often. And then timeline, just to give you a sense, to your question, landlord, it used to be, I said, you could be a dollar short and a minute late and you could get an eviction filed on you in Georgia. Now it is, you could be 3 days late. I take that. You get a 3-day, let me put it better. You get a 3-day grace period now under Georgia law, even if that wasn't provided in a lease, where the landlord has to give you those 3 days from notice to cure things. So I no longer can say that other line, but 3 days isn't a lot of time. And then after those 3 days, a landlord with proper notice, then a landlord can file in the court. Once you get served, you have 7 days to answer that eviction. That's why we have a walk-in clinic at the courthouse. So everybody who is trying to figure out how to answer that form can do so. If you fill that form out wrong, whether it's literacy or just it's a confusing form, or you know what, that 6-month story I was telling you doesn't fit on this form, and you don't raise something that's a defense, you can get evicted. You don't really get a hearing in court. You get to go there and get a speech along with 100 other people that you're evicted because you didn't raise a legally cognizable defense on your answer form. But in any event, backing up, you get a hearing. It used to be within 10 days. This is when I practice. I know, again, from my landlord friends, it's a little longer than that now to get a hearing in certain counties. But it is still one of the fastest legal processes in the country. And then on the 8th day after that hearing, if you lose, that's when the marshals can come out. I've left out, for time's sake, kind of all the trauma that's part of that. Each time that happens, that is a traumatic thing, and you were in survival mode. So we talk about expecting people to access services, navigate, calling 6 different agencies, or who has rental assistance funds, all those things when you're kind of in survival mode about what's coming. Obviously, that's exceedingly difficult ask.
Thank you for that. We got first question. And please introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Good. I'm Pam Storm. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'll repeat your question.
Sorry, I'm Pam Storm. I'm I'm an affordable housing provider here in this fantastic neighborhood, work with plenty of you all. Very hands-on. We work with many of you all here. I applaud you both for what you're doing. I want to ask, you know Margie Stackmeyer, either of you? Okay, great. Because she has done some fabulous work around stability with schools and neighborhoods, and those are shocking numbers. My question to you both is, what can we do to make this area more desirable? So I'm a high quality provider, and I know several in the room who are. It's very hard to get people to want to live here. There's a lot of problems, and I spend $1,000 per month per property on security, so over $6,000 a month. I lose a lot of money being an affordable housing provider. I have a lot of vacancies. Everybody I know has a lot of vacancies. There's a lot of problems. We need more jobs, we need more security and safety, and we can all do it together. But that's sort of my question to you both is, how do we, make this a more stable, secure area?
That's a tough one, because I think most of these solutions are not just one stop solution, right? I think you got to look to the root of why you might have crime in an area. You got to look to the root of why, you might have some instability in the area. Deep research that I'm sure you guys have already done around, if there are enough jobs for everyone, if there are enough extracurricular activities for young people, if there's enough opportunities for community building. I think once you start building a community that people feel really good and everybody feels included, then some of these things work themselves out. I know that sounds simple, but I think if we really try to find out what all the different aspects that are coming together to make this feel not as desirable, and we start, bringing these nonprofits together to figure out how to solve some of these problems and put more money into it, then some of these problems start to work themselves out. You've got to figure out how to include everybody, right? Now, I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but I think it's very multifaceted.
Yeah, for the sake of time. Also, always being sensitive to that word desirable is kind of a triggering word.
Desirable, right.
Because there are a lot of
Desirable
people in the
desirable.
room now who live here, who have been here for a while, who find the neighborhood to be desirable. And so when you say desirable, always ask for who on the other side. But we can talk a little bit more about that offline. Next question.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Leonard Watkins, NPO chairperson. This is for HouseProud.
Yes.
From the time that a senior calls you, take us through how fast you work. So if I have a senior right now who has to have a house fixed because they've been scammed, how fast do you work?
It depends on the situation and the funding. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I have 786 people on my waiting list as of today. It's one of these things I pretty much check after I check the HouseProud bank account, my personal bank account, I check our waiting list, right? And so if they have an emergency, you don't have hot water, you don't have running water, it's leaking over your bed and it's dangerous, I can get to you in 24 to 48 hours if it's an emergency situation. But if it's something that's not an emergency, we've got to go back to our funding pools and see, where do we have funding? Do we have enough funding? Is it a place where we can help these folks, right? So it depends on the situation. I wish it was an easy answer where I could say everybody gets served within a week or two. That wouldn't be reality. If you've got a dire emergency, I'm gonna get to you real soon. I'm gonna figure out a way to make sure that if you don't have any air in your house, you're gonna get air of some sort. If I gotta come to your house myself with a portable unit, you're gonna get some air in your house. But if you have these deeper problems that are a result of unfortunate deferred maintenance from years and years and years, you could be, honestly, on our waiting list for a year because I have 780 plus people on my waiting list and there's not enough funding to go around to be able to serve every one of those. So it's interesting, a lot of people are like, oh, y'all don't do anything for anybody. So no, it's not true. We can only do as much as we have funding to support. So It's very contingent on where the funding is, how much we have, and how dire your situation is.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a good question, though.
Hi, my name's Kashi Segal. I'm right here. So I work in food access, and one of the things that we have learned in our many years of doing this now is that seniors, when they apply for SNAP benefits, their houses are taken into their total financial picture.
Oh, wow.
And so they get fewer dollars as part of their SNAP benefits because their house is seen as an asset, which is problematic because they need, people need so many other pieces of help. So have you seen this? Is food access and food security part of the conversation that you're having with the population that you serve?
Absolutely. We found during COVID, and we are finding now, is prices for gas increases, prices for food increase when we sit with every homeowner. Because the way that we try to do things is we try to go out to every homeowner and sit down with them and figure out all of their needs and try to refer them to other organizations that can help them with those needs. Food insecurity is a major problem, and I'm sure we know this. And yes, I have seen it, not as much, but I have definitely seen it where the house is an asset. Like I said, they don't feel like it's an asset because it's falling down around them. But because of things that had nothing to do with them, the changes in the community have now turned their house both into an asset, right, which harms them, and a liability, right? And so it's one of those areas where it's really important to have good partners that you can rely on to help, refer those homeowners to other places. But I don't know how we fix that, right? I had a homeowner that we really needed to get into a new housing situation, and our house is unlivable, but she was having a hard time finding new semi-permanent senior housing that was subsidized because her house is this big asset, but it's unlivable. But it's in a community that looks amazing all around her, and she's got code enforcement issues, and so she falls through these cracks of, I'm not finding relief anywhere because I only bring in $1,200 a month, but this house is an asset. It's keeping me from being able to get subsidized housing. So it is a major issue. We're on the ground with so many folks that we find all of these issues start to stack upon each other, and before you know it, I've had homeowners, that end up eventually homeless because they, I find out about later, they didn't have enough education. So because of that, we've become very passionate about, not just doing roofs and plumbing and electrical, educate every homeowner as well as you can on how to protect themselves from the bad things that can happen when you're living in a moving, changing, gentrifying community.
I'll add to that list one other element to think about from the non-homeowner side or from the renter side is this issue around the housing cliff and the assets cliff. When you are someone who's receiving federal benefits, that there are certain markers where you hit where you've got too much assets, you've got too much money in savings, you've got too much, and a relatively low threshold to cross through. So that's another one of those elements when we start talking about economic mobility to get to community transformation. Like these are other policy barriers that present themselves for people being able to matriculate and find those different resources that they need.
Yeah, good morning. Tilly Ward, Community Resources of Atlanta. This is very interesting and informative. And as my friend who's in housing affordability, Bill Bowling would say, you're overwhelmed with opportunity. Now, in terms of grandma's house who needs fixing, what have you, what keeps her house from being increased in property taxes 10 and 20%? She had nothing to do with it. House is still in need, number one. And number two, in terms of passionate eviction, whatever that is, 3 days is most impassionate. How can you assist those in kind of stretching it to find some solutions to avoid the eviction if you find it's one of those quality cases that needs assistance?
Right. I think from the tax standpoint, right, I know y'all sick of me saying it, education, right? There's some exemptions that you can get to try to keep your property taxes a little bit lower. There are some programs that, really beautiful programs out here that will help those homeowners pay their property taxes for long periods of time. I know there's one through Invest Atlanta. I think it all goes back to education. And I'll say it a million times, you'll be sick of me saying, preservation without education, you got to have the two together.
Michael, you have anything?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I mean, start where Lisa left off, that tenants' rights and education is really important, in the vein that we try to get as preventative as possible, have all the opportunities to head off that eviction filing before it happens. So I think the other thing that there is hopefully increased awareness of is that eviction filing itself, even if we're able to resolve it, becomes like the Scarlet E, and it makes it harder and harder to get an affordable or any apartment the next time. So one is, there is a real place for community education for tenants, but there's an even bigger place, I think, for low barrier, accessible rental assistance. When we have the benefit of having funds for that, we try to have it where it is accessible in the community, in our community-based programs from our community-based workers. And there is this rental assistance fatigue, I think, that is set in amongst the philanthropic community and others, that I think has some narratives behind it too, that if a family gets rental assistance in 1 month, that it's somehow problematic or a reason not to fund this because they might need it 12 months later. This is one of my pet peeves, and I am obviously using your question to put it in there, but should be a feature of these rental assistance programs. It's not a bug, it's not a flaw. There's no way in which providing $1,000 to a family 1 month means that 12 months later we have solved income volatility and income disparity in Atlanta or all those other problems that lead to that. So we're proud in our neighborhood-based programs that a family might come back 14 months later, because that means we made a connection, they trust us, and they needed it, and we keep that kid in that school. So it is an answer to your question that we need more rental assistance, whether it's to AVLF or others. The need for that is not gone. I hope we get to a day where there's enough truly affordable housing where that's not needed. But that is not a problem. That is not a sign of dependency. You can set up your programs. If someone's coming to you month after month for that, you can do a deeper look. It's why we employ as many social workers as lawyers to have that kind of check-in. But that need is still really strong. And that's one of the things I see, that those preventative things, I don't want us to be dealing with it once there's an eviction filing, even though that's what we do. That is not the best result and has long-term effects for those tenants. So we can head it off before that. I think that's important work.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you all for this presentation. I am a super fan of yours. I'm the president and founder of the John Ahmann fan club, accepting new members. But my name is Davita Huntley, and I remember that AVLF was in the basement of Hollis Innovation Academy, and I wanted to know how that, is there still a partnership with the Atlanta Public Schools, because those slides were very alarming to me. And also, I want to ask specifically about renters who are living in properties where they are made aware that the property is in foreclosure. Mm-hmm. And what I'm understanding by law in Georgia, they are still obligated to pay their rent. And I want to know how AVLF can help with, I know a few families that are dealing with that right now.
Yeah, so yes, there still is a partnership with APS. Schools sometimes move us around within their building, and we're just happy to be guests there. But yes, in Hollis and TAG, we are kind of transitioning to try to focus at a cluster level, and grateful to the support of the Blank Foundation for that. So, but in the first instance, that'll be really focusing in on the Washington cluster. And then there's conversations, because you saw it's needed in all the other clusters, so we're in conversations with the city and APS about expanding that. But we are fully committed to staying in the neighborhood-based work, even at periods where there wasn't funding to stay in, because I know how quickly that trust can be lost. To your legal question, yes, I mean, that is right. Even if it is going into foreclosure, which can mean a lot of things, including the landlord is falling behind, but the bank doesn't yet own it, yes, fair or not, that rental obligation remains. That rental obligation remains no matter what your landlord is doing. They could be going to Haiti, they could be blowing it on whatever, and not paying their mortgage. The tenant still has to pay that rent. And that is maybe not fair, but I want to take this opportunity to say that, because the second you don't, an eviction ensues. What is important then for that tenant to know is, one, certainly reach out for legal assistance, and to AVLF, monitor what is going on, because then it will change hands and you do still have rights as a tenant. You just have a new landlord. It's the bank. It depends what you want to do. A lot of the legal work during the foreclosure crisis was us representing tenants to get what could be fairly, lucrative is not the right word, just fair and reasonable kind of cash for keys deals from the bank. And that may not be great because you don't want to leave your legacy neighborhood. Those neighborhoods are already desirable to you because that's where you grew up. But it may be that bank isn't going to be the best landlord anyway, and at least you should get money that allows you to land on your feet somewhere else. So you do have those rights, and a bank can't come. Or if there are all kinds of people by a foreclosure, that person comes and says, you now just have to get out tomorrow. That is not true. You still have all the rights of the tenant, even if there is not a lease in place. That new landlord, any landlord, has to give you 60 days notice. And then after those 60 days, start that process that I described in the answer to Sterling's question. So you still all have all these rights. Don't just walk out because someone told you to. You may also have leverage to land on your feet.
I see so many more hands, and I hate that we have to cut it here for time, but we will be around this morning. Please come corner any one of us for any additional conversations. If y'all could just give a hand to our panelists this morning. I thank and appreciate both of you for the work that you do for the Westside, for Atlanta. This work is not easy, and so waking up every day to take on that challenge, to say that you're going to try to create the better world. I have, even to John's comment earlier about Dr. King, one of one of the inspirations, Reverend James Lawson had a quote that he said, we're not just doing this thing, whatever it is that you're doing, affordable housing, income enhancement, economic mobility work. There's all these different things that we talk about, but he talked about that we're trying to create God's kingdom on earth through the work that we do. And so you all are doing that work. Thank you for your partnership, and we look forward to continuing to be in partnership with you.
Thank you for your partnership.
We are so grateful for your panel. We are going to do the gift drawings in just a moment, so we want everyone to hang for just a moment so we can do the gift drawing. Y'all can, let's give them a big round of applause for that great conversation. Thank you. What I really appreciate about the conversation and appreciate about the questions, right? All this work, we exist in this world of imperfections, right? And in a perfect world, these things would need to be addressed and leaned into the way they are today. And it seems like what I always find a challenging frame is this city is rich in resources to solve these problems. So how do we get those resources to the people that need? A question was asked earlier about how do we improve the living conditions of these neighborhoods. And I want to tell everyone we are at a really important time because our mayor, Andre Dickens, is leading a neighborhood reinvestment initiative targeting these very neighborhoods. And the central premise is to put more resources to improve the living conditions of these neighborhoods. That conversation starts on Monday with City Council legislation. For so those of you that want to lean in and influence how our policymakers are thinking about what to do, now is the time. Now is the time, and I would urge you to pay attention to the conversation that's going to move very fast over the next month or so. So get it, because there's literally tens of millions of dollars, billions of dollars they are talking about, which far eclipse, as much as we appreciate our philanthropic donors, far eclipse the investment of our philanthropic donors as is appropriate. So now is the time to go down and raise these issues and put your voice into what the city is going to be doing ahead. So thank you again to our panel for bringing this up. And I know we want to do the Home Depot panel, or the gift drawing, Goodwill gift drawing.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll start with our Home Depot gift card, which, as a reminder, if you haven't been here in the last couple weeks, it is now couple months, it's now a $50 Home Depot gift card. So you can get a couple 2x4s. But I'm gonna say all 6 numbers. 419701.
My God in heaven.
You are. Well, let's go. Congratulations.
So when you're in my fan club, you see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, little incentive.
A mess. All right, and then our next drawing is a Goodwill of North Georgia gift card. So that's the blue ticket. It is 7 numbers. I'm going to say all 7. 112-0461. 112-0461. All right, nobody's here. Let's try this again. 112-0458. Let's go. That's the Miss Thelma. Well, excellent, excellent. Well, again, we just want to thank you guys for attending and joining us here today. We, of course, want to thank the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, Sterling, who is our moderator, as well as our devotion speaker for today. We want to thank Lisa from HouseProud and Michael from AVLF for being such gracious speakers for today. Remember to get engaged in our socials. Share what you learned today. Share pictures, share conversation, share impact, because as we emanate from this room, obviously the community benefits from it. So come back and join us next month, Friday, June 19th. That is on Juneteenth. We'll have a great program that will focus around those efforts, and we'll see you guys next month. Have a great day.